Warning, this podcast, website, and associated social media accounts are intended for audiences of legal drinking age. We do not advocate overconsumption or the abuse of alcohol. Never drink and drive, drink responsibly. And please remember to always take what we say with a grain of salt. After all, we are just some dudes with some brews.
We started out by crawling out from under the thumb of the man. The lovers of God with dad bods, just trying to feed our fam. Go sit right there and grab a beer, you know just what to do. Throw it back, get hammered, and listen to dudes and brews.
Boom. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
There you go. Yeah, you got
better
with the clap.
You got a better clap than I do.
Yeah, that'll work.
Oh well, good enough.
Those. Hey,
Yeah,
as long as you get the peak.
You have more experience at this.
Oh, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
I try. So, man, I really appreciate you sitting down with us. So we're with Seth Morgan, head owner, brewer. You call yourself the head janitor.
Head janitor. Yeah, that's what I do most of the time.
It's really funny. There's a brewery that I like to visit when I go visit my brother in Nebraska. About halfway in between, there's a brewery in Wichita.
Okay.
And when I got the owner's card for the first time, it says OG Janitor on the card. So as an avid home brewer myself, I totally get your cleaning majority of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah, people always they always ask, "Oh man, I want to be a brewer. I want to work in the industry." And my first question is, "Do you like doing dishes? Do you like cleaning your house?" And they're like, "No, that doesn't sound very fun at all." I'm like, "Well, that's what we do,
Right.
So to speak. We're cleaning a lot." So
No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Got to keep things sanitized. So I mean, it makes sense. But I want to start from the very, very beginning. So I need you to go back to the beginning and give me your craft beer origin story. Like, what got you into craft beer originally?
Sure. So I went to North Texas here in Denton.
Okay.
And when I was going to school, I love to travel. I travel a lot and like anywhere I can all over the world. And I decided to be an exchange student, an international exchange student in England. And I'd been over there before, fell in love with it, so I said I want to go live there and really just immerse myself in the culture. And before I went, I was in college. I was poor. I was a consummate, Bud Light, Coors Light, whatever's on sale drinker.
Yeah. No,
and that's what, so you go over there, and I went by myself, and first couple days I'm there, I'm checking out some pubs, and you walk into a pub and hey, do you have any Keystone Light? And they just what, get out of here, you stupid American, come on, learn what real beer is.
Right.
And it was funny, I always tried to find the lightest thing, but I was there for a year, so over time, it's like, well, I'm going to drink something, so I'm going to just drink, when in Rome, or, when in England, as they say. So I started drinking all these warm beers, dark beers, ones that came off of an engine, like a pull. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I was like, wow, this beer is amazing. I love it. It's got so much flavor. It's not just this watery substance that I'm used to back home. And so when I got home, this was a few years ago. So it was before all the breweries were around. It was really before, I would say even the growler bars and places that did growlers, before that was the thing.
Yeah.
And before you see any of the incredible options that you have now in craft beer. So I started homebrewing. And I remember the first kit that I purchased was actually online.
Okay.
But it wasn't even online. It was a catalog. There was a homebrew catalog that I found. And so I went in, called it, and I ordered this, kit and made this beer because I was like, I'm going to try to make an English, pub ale. And, oh God, it was horrible. It was absolutely terrible.
Hey, man, I've been there.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw it together. And then I tried a couple of things of wine because that seemed a little easier to make, less steps or whatever. But anyways, one thing led to another. I kept trying, bought some more equipment, met people, joined a homebrew guild, and then I met this one guy specifically, and he taught me how to brew beer. So we were actually working on I asked him to come over. He was a friend of mine that I just met through church, and I had a fence that was broken. He was like, "Yeah, I'll come over and help you work on the fence." And we're working, and we're talking about beer and all that. And he said he was a home brewer, and I was like, Oh my gosh.
So cool. Yeah.
Teach me how to homebrew. Oh, teach me how to homebrew. So so he taught me how to homebrew. One thing led to another. And in about 2012, 2011, 2012, my wife and I made the decision of like, all right, you know what? Let's give this a run.
Really?
And we got this building in 2015. We actually opened in 2017. So it took a while.
Right.
Because I was in corporate America and a totally different thing, and I was trying to go to school at the same time to learn how to brew, and so it took a little. I want to make sure and do it right. So we took our time to build a really strong business plan, make a lot of connections, really know how to make beer, because I'd been home brewing for about 15 years at that point.
Okay.
Or maybe 14 years. So it was like, well, if I'm going to put my life at stake, I need to really learn how to brew beer. So I did. I went to the American Brewers Guild, which is in Vermont, which is amazing, and the beer's incredible up there if you haven't been. And learned how to brew on a professional scale.
Oh, cool.
So
when you were home brewing, like when you started, did you start out doing all grain, or did you do extract batches? How did you start?
I started with extract,
Okay.
And then I did partial mash.
Yeah, okay.
And I did partial.
I didn't know that there was a difference, because I started with partial mash.
Okay.
With steeping grains.
Yeah. I was trying to do just extract, and then my friend, his name is Dennis. If I refer to Poppy, we have a beer called Poppy. So the beer that I've been brewing for over, call it 20 years, is named after him.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's kind of the grandfather of teaching me how to brew. So I was doing just extract, and then when he got involved, he was like, no, we're gonna do the partial mash, partial grain. So that I did that for quite a long time, and then I really got into it and said, okay, now I'm going to go all the way. And after doing partial mash for a few years, I dove in and bought a bunch of equipment, and then I started doing like all grain.
Okay. Yeah. You did it a little bit better than I did.
Cheers, by the way.
Brother. Yeah. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you.
So you did it a little bit different than I did. I started out 1 gallon extract, partial mash.
Okay.
And then I got a buddy of mine to come over, because I was doing this in my apartment.
Okay.
Just on the stovetop. And
Perfect.
A buddy of mine, he liked beer, so I invited him over, and he's like, dude, why don't we just do this in bigger batches? We could split it. So we found a guy online that was selling a full 3-tier gravity system.
Oh, nice.
And we jumped up to 5 gallons and really not knowing anything.
Yeah.
So we really
Except
just
it's fun. It's fun to drink. Brew days are great.
Bro, I've got some horror stories. I know we were at his house one day, and we're brewing, and it takes forever because we don't know what we're doing. 1, 2, it is just a long day.
Yeah.
But it started to rain. So we got the boil going. We're like huddled over the boiler with the umbrella, trying to keep the rain and leaves out of it. It's those kind of stories or trials. That just make it fun.
Oh, absolutely. Exploding bottles.
So you did that for a while, and you wanted to move into commercial brewing. What made you? Did you just like the hobby, and you wanted to make that hobby a career? Or?
Yeah, I did. So I remember the day very specifically. I had a pretty shitty, or I don't know if I can say shit on there. Yeah, I had a shitty week, and it was a Saturday, so I was like, I'm gonna brew. And I was talking to my wife, and she was like, well, why don't you brew on Saturday? I know it's been a tough week. You brew, we'll move our plans. So I brewed, and at the end of the day, I'm in there. We're having a beer, cooking dinner, and she's chopping stuff up. She's chopping up some vegetables for dinner, and I was like, man, I just have so much fun when I'm brewing, and it was just lamenting or pouting, I guess. And I said, man, I wish I could do this for a living. And she was chopping. I remember she put the knife down. She looked at me. She said, well, either do it or quit talking about it. Because apparently I had mentioned that too many times. And
get off the pot, man.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. She was like, either shit or get off the pot. She goes, I'm tired of you talking about this. And I was like, really? Are you serious? She goes, yeah. She goes, well, let's take a look and see if it's viable. So that was 2011. Spent the next year going to CBC, really, going to a lot of places, really trying to understand what it means to own and run a brewery, and economically, what does that look like? Yeah. And so I met a lot of people, started building a business plan, started trying to find a place. I went to beer school and started lining everything up to get ready for that. And I said, okay, well, let's make sure that we're going to get in this, giving ourselves the best chance for success. And that just took a little while, just to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row. So that's what it was. And I said, "Are you serious?" And so I spent a lot of time doing research, about a year, saying, "Okay, can we really do this?" Meeting people, finding investors, talking to banks, all that stuff, figuring out how much equipment's going to cost, and found out that it was more viable than we anticipated. But that was on the escalation of craft beer. So the timing was great. We were supposed to open in 2015. That's not the way. The world doesn't work like you always want it to, but we did get open in 17.
So were you brewing before you guys had the facility? Were you doing commercial stuff and just sending it out, or was it?
No.
Did you just wait? Okay.
No, we waited. So yeah, we kind of a horrible side story is we bought equipment, and it was supposed to be brand new equipment from a guy. It did not work. And so we had to buy new equipment. So I was still home brewing, and I bought a 20-barrel homebrew system so I could do like one half-barrel keg at a time. Okay. And so for the first year that we were open... 20 gallon.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's a lot to homebrew at home, yeah.
Yeah, so it was just, good home, and that was going to be our pilot system, so bought it in preparation for this. And so for the first year, I was only doing batches that size and throwing them up there. So we only had 2 to 4 beers of our own the first year we were open, and the rest was guest taps. So honestly, we were more like a bar. Okay. And then we had to wait, get new equipment. There was a lead time. At that time, there was equipment was in high demand, and because there were so many breweries open up, everybody says, "Well, I can't get you equipment for 7 months." So we had to buy new equipment. It was a long story, so the first beer that we released that was ours was about a month after we opened, because we had some issues with the city in getting a CO for the back room. So we had to wait to brew, and they came by and checked and made sure our tanks were empty. They wouldn't let us do anything, which was, it is what it is. But everything's good. We got a great relationship with the city now, so that's awesome. So anybody who's thinking about opening a brewery, even if you have a hard time through the opening process, don't burn bridges.
Right.
Go out there and continue to mend fences with folks.
I imagine that there's a lot of red tape that you have to go
so much red. Oh my gosh, so much red tape, so much. But
so do you still use
that? Answered the question.
Yeah. Do you still use that half barrel system as like an R&D pilot system, or?
Oh, we did for about the first 3 years.
Okay.
And we're 6.5 years in now, and we don't anymore. And the reason we don't is because when we introduce new beers, when you brew enough, if you use certain types of hops, certain yeast strains, and certain grain bills, what the end result's going to be. So you can back into it and get pretty darn close to anything. And once you've been brewing for a while. So, I was trying to think the other day, how many batches have I brewed? And at this point, it's, thousands. So I don't even know, but you get to know ingredients pretty well. And so we can build a recipe knowing what we want to accomplish, and just go straight to the big system now.
Right.
And we have a 10 barrel.
And it would have surprised me months ago, but I've talked to a few different breweries now that do this exact same thing. They're like, "Oh, man, I'm knowledgeable enough that I know that the beer is going to be good." Yeah. Like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. And I would say probably, thank goodness we haven't had to dump a batch in a while, but there were a couple when we first started doing that you just, it didn't turn out.
It's rough.
And so you got to dump thousands of dollars down the drain, and it's painful, but you're like, I don't want to put my name on something that is going to suck.
100%. So how does that process go to getting it out to market, if you will? Is it just you're the yes or no on it, or do you guys have like a team that says like collaborates? How do you guys determine this is not good enough to give to the masses?
The public decides.
Oh, really? Okay.
We absolutely do it on demand.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is interesting. When I start, for those few years, I was still in corporate America, traveling around, doing my thing. I went to breweries all the time. So if I traveled to Atlanta, Chicago, California, St. Louis, wherever I was, I'd always bake in an extra half a day to go hit a couple of breweries before I jumped on a plane.
Yeah.
or I'd maybe fly in a little early or something. And I met with so many people. And surprisingly, almost every single brewery we went to, and I went to hundreds, said we had a flagship lineup that we were going to use. Here's our 6 beers. And lo and behold, the public said, no, we like these beers the best. And so they, they directed like what was going to be popular or what you sent out on the market. So so we have 28 taps. Usually about 24 of those are ours. We have a couple of ciders. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they're ours. So we have about 15 beers that are mainstays that are on tap all the time now.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And then we have about 10 that we rotate. And we come out with a new beer at least every couple of weeks.
Okay.
But like in 2 weeks, we're coming out with 3 new beers in one day. So it's because we're having like a haze festival.
Oh, cool.
So we're releasing actually 5 beers that day, but 3 of them are brand new.
Oh, cool.
So, but we'll do new beers, and so those new beers, if they take off and people love them, we'll brew it again. And if the demand keeps going up, we'll keep making it, and then it might either be added to the list of the permanents or replace something that has maybe fallen off.
No, and this makes perfect sense. Let the people speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm going to have to reword this question because I think I may have said this wrong. What I was trying to get at is like when you brew a beer, before you put it on tap, you guys are trying it.
Oh,
like, is there,
I totally
I
answered the question.
I said it wrong because I said to go to market.
Yeah.
I meant more like, when you guys try a beer out here, is there like a group of you guys that say, hey, we all have to have our okay on this before we put it on tap?
Oh, another great question.
Because you mentioned that you've had to dump beers in the past.
We do.
It's a good thing it hadn't been a while. It's awesome.
Yeah. Barrels are another story. Barrels are hit and miss. You may just end up with a bad barrel. So that happens.
I've talked to breweries that say, I just built this in as a lost because we don't know.
Yeah, you don't. No, that's a great question. So if we brew something, we won't send it out into market, like into the tap room, until we pull it back, we carb it, we test it, we try it for usually a couple of weeks, and we just want to make sure that our palates are right, make sure the beer doesn't change, make sure, because sometimes off flavors don't present themselves until after the beer is finished and polished and ready to go, right?
Found that out recently.
Yeah, because sometimes when it's still in the green beer phase, you don't pick up everything.
Yeah.
And so we wait until we know it's going to be a good beer, and then we may tentatively put it in the calendar, and we'll say new beer release. But then that way we don't say what the beer is, and then if we have to cancel it, we just can strike it. Yeah. For marketing purposes.
For sure.
But if it's bad, then we're like, all right, well, you know what? Normally, what we do if it's a bad beer, we'll get some barrels and we'll throw it into a barrel.
Nice.
Because it's like, I'm going to dump it anyway. There is a chance that if I put it in a barrel, I might be able to extract or get something at the end.
Okay.
Especially if it's kind of funky and we're like, okay, you know what? Well, then let's just let's turn it into a wild.
For sure.
A wild ale.
Oh,
and
nice.
then, worst case scenario.
Farmhouse or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Worst case scenario, you dump it 9 months later. I mean, it's the same thing you were going to do anyway.
Right.
So why not give it a try? And I would say a third or half the time, we end up with a really cool beer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, nope, still sucks. Dump it. Yeah.
I'm sure that's happened.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you decided to go with this location. Was this just because you went to a school here? Are you from the area? Or?
Yeah. I grew up here.
Okay, because this is I'll tell you this. We came down here for Blue Bonnet Brew Fest.
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you all. That was so much fun.
In the spring, dude, it was awesome.
Yeah.
This was the first stop, and it should have been the only stop, if I'm being honest. Not that everything here's nice, but it was so fun that I went back home, got some of the buddies that do the podcast with me, and I brought them out like 3 weeks later because I'm like, we got to go hit up Denton County again.
Oh, thanks so much, man.
Because it's so good.
Thank you. Well, and also, if there's any homebrewers watching, if you don't go to Blue Bonnet already, you should go. It's so much fun. We still do the commercial night, or they call it industry night, commercial night, where we go out. We still do that every year because we went to Blue Bonnet before we opened this,
right? And
we just fell in love with it. Love the people, love the crowd, love just everything that it does and means. So and the Denton County Homebrewers Guild still meets here as well because
nice.
I'm still a member because I want to be connected to that.
Right. No, dude, that is awesome. Like, I'm a part of a homebrew club. There's a commercial brewer that's still a part of the club. He comes in every now and again, and so I love that you keep it. You're like, hey, this is where I started. I'm not gonna forget my grassroots.
Oh heck no.
That's awesome that you guys do meetings and everything here. That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a homebrew contest in the fall that we do, the Red Coat Challenge.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we do that.
Can you give me details on that?
Yeah, so the Red Coat Challenge is all English beers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it is the award ceremony is usually the first or second week in November. I think it's the second week this year. And so we brew. Or anybody who wants to brew, they brew, and the beer has to be in by mid-October.
Okay.
And there's a group of us that are. I'm a certified Cicerone. I'm a certified beer judge, so
nice.
I'm on the panel too for judging, which is so much fun.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's a whole group of us that do it though.
Yeah.
And there's some home brewers. It's cool to get us all together and do it. But it's just to stay connected and be a part of it.
Dude, that's awesome. We do something similar. We have every October we have we call it beer camp. Go out and camp, and then we do like.
Oh my gosh, sounds like so much fun!
Olympics.
I love it.
And that is the day that we do an award ceremony for the inner club competition. I like that you guys have a name for yours. We need to do that for ours.
Yeah.
But every year, basically, everybody brews the exact same style.
Yeah.
Whoever wins decides the style for next year.
Oh,
so
cool.
right now we're doing an Irish Red. So that's due next month.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the awards and everything during beer camp in October.
Sweet.
So I need to come up with something. Not that I plan on winning, but you want to be able to call it out.
Of course, yeah, you should.
We hand around a paddle that has your name engraved on it.
Oh, that's so much fun! Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun. So we're the Mash Runners Homebrew Club in Grayson County. So if you're in Grayson County, hit us up.
Check it out. That sounds like fun,
dude. It is fun. Like, it is the best weekend of you. Everybody brings home brews. We have like 4 or 5 jockey boxes.
Oh, fantastic.
And we're just hanging out, playing some games. So
camping.
Yeah.
Oh, and that time of the year is the best to camp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right now it would be miserable.
Don't do it right now.
No, not at all. I've made that mistake of camping in the summer, and it's unless you're like swimming, and you're just miserable.
In Texas, no.
Yeah.
Colorado in the mountains, maybe. Or sure, but not here. Yeah.
Right. No,
yeah.
Definitely not here. So, dude, you guys do a phenomenal job with your beers.
Thank you so much.
Lager, this is one thing that I'm a little bit of a geek, so I like to try a lager at a place so that I can really judge you guys.
So on point.
Because there's other things that you can like hide stuff in. You can't hide anything in a nice American lager.
I do the same thing. Every time I go to a new brewery, I'll always try whatever their lightest beer is. If it's like an American lager, Mexican lager, Kolsch, Pilsner, something that's like super, because you can't hide.
Right.
Yeah, so I want to see, okay, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And plus, Pilsners, surprisingly, are actually pretty hard to make. To make a really good, balanced, clean, well-attenuated, like nice, crispy Pilsner, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
So, you try that, you're like, okay, these guys know what they're doing, or these gals know what they're doing. And then we do a lot of crazy stuff too. But yeah, I do the same thing. That's cool.
Dude, you're right about Pilsners. There's a lot in the market that I feel are a little hop heavy.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is in American beers, where I feel like we're all hop heavy.
Mm-hmm.
You try.
We are.
I get it, but I don't at the same time, because I do like some of these international styles.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta try our Kolsch then. It's.
So funny story.
Okay.
When we were here last, when I brought my podcast buddies, I was like, hey, I got to grab some beer to go. So we actually brought home the Lonesome Kolsch.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's one of the few beers that have gotten a perfect score of a 5 on Untappd with us.
Oh, wow.
Dude,
Thank
in
you.
the moment, we were loving that damn thing.
Oh, well, thank
I'll tell
you.
you that,
well,
so.
we were pretty happy because we try to do it. It's a very traditional style, and it's not as crazy hoppy as some of the ones you have in the U.S. So that's why I was going to say you should try it, because we keep it pretty traditional.
Dude, it is crisp and clean.
Thank you.
Just the way that you want it out of that style.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Honestly, you guys do a great job, and I've noticed that when it comes to like your artwork and stuff, obviously you have the the antlers here. Are you an avid hunter, or like what came about the?
Great question. So I do like to hunt. That's not the reason that's on there though.
Okay.
I mean, I don't hunt a lot anymore because I'm too busy doing janitor work.
Right. I get it.
But it's fun to do. For me, hunting is more about I could go hunt and shoot with a camera just as because I love being out in the outdoors. Absolutely love the outdoors. But that's part of the attachment to the animals. And you look at a lot of our artwork, and we have Texas animals on there. By design. But the inspiration for the antlers actually came from my great-grandfather. So the coat of arms, I was named after my great-grandfather, and on the family coat of arms, it's on my mom's side, but there's antlers on it. And so I wanted, and it was actually elk or stag antlers, but which is kind of like the wall over there. You'll see there's a wallpaper, and there's you have to come in to see it. That was the connection there, but that led to something I wanted to tie it into like Texas roots. And the idea of just having a Texas animal as opposed to, you don't see elk in Texas. Right. So I wanted to use that. And it was an inspiration to pay homage to my great-grandfather, who I was named after, and just keep it family related. So that's where it came from. And it's funny, a lot of people are like, oh, you must be a big hunter. I do like to hunt, but the inspiration was really to keep it connected to my roots and my family.
Hey, if that is what gets started with the conversation, I'm all down for it, because that is a great story.
Oh, thank you.
I love the homage to the family crest, if you will. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
For all of our logos, not all of them, but a lot of them have, we call them their spirit animals. So a beer will have a Texas spirit animal. And it's just because I think there's, I know I have connectivity. A lot of people have connectivity with animals and with the outdoors, and basically just going on adventures and camping and hiking and rafting and, just all of that stuff. Just anything outdoors we really, really like to do. So it was kind of a connection to that too. And just like, one, it feels good, but also just, having different parts of Texas on the label that mean different things. And then there's also a series that we've done where there are animals or pictures on that represent all of our children too. So it's like our children, the spirit animal that we gave them, they are.
Oh, that's
so cool. So that was just the tie-in. So.
Dude, that is awesome. Awesome, dude. I love your story. Your story's been phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
You want to get in another beer and really geek out on some of the weird stuff that you guys do here?
Oh, I'm totally down. Totally down for that.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right.
All right, brother, man, I appreciate you giving us a little tasters here.
Yeah.
As I mentioned previously to you, one of the biggest reasons why I like you guys is because you guys do I guess you guys call it a beer engine. I've always called it a hand pull. I don't know what the hell it is. You're the one who went to England, not me.
Well, I think it's technically a beer engine is what they call it, but they also say, I'm going to pull a beer for you. It's a pull.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of, I think, more colloquial, but it's used everywhere.
Okay, and do you guys always have some sort of English beer on that? Or
we don't right now. We're out of it, so we have to wait and brew it again. Okay. But so right now we have our amber on there.
The amber, okay.
Which is nice.
It's close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
And then you do the slow pull, the side pull.
Yeah.
And you poured the Kolsch on it.
I did.
Which, like I said, one of my favorite beers that you guys do. So
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You did that.
We're excited about that.
Was that just like something that you brought from England when you went over there? Like, why did you want to do both of those different tap styles?
Well, interestingly enough, and I'll go get one in a second. I'll show you. There's something I want to show you about the side pull or the slow pour. Mm-hmm. The beer engine I bought after we opened the brewery because I missed having that style of beer from having been there. So I was like, okay, well, I want this. So I bought it literally for me.
I love it.
Because I was just like, you know what? Hey, you know what? It's my bar. This is what I want.
I'll do what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that, and we put it up here just because it was all together. And normally, if you want to have a beer, we'll come back here and get a beer at the end of the day. And people saw it and they started asking about it. We're like, well, sure, we'll sell it to you. We'll sell you a beer and do all that. And so we did, and it became really, really popular.
Nice.
And now I think people would be pretty upset if we pulled it out of here, but which won't happen, by the way.
Good.
Because I'm such a fan of that style. It's so easy to drink. I'm nostalgic in a sense too.
Yeah.
So that's when we got that. For the side pull, that's another historical way that beer was served, but it's confusing to people because both the beer engine or the hand pull and the side pull or slow pour, it's called slow pour for a reason, because it takes about a minute to 2 minutes to pour a beer, just like at the engine.
Yeah.
So you have to pour and you have to wait for it to settle and you top it off.
Yeah.
So that's very un-American, because most people, you pour a pint, it's supposed to be 8 seconds is the average.
Yeah.
So you pour it 8 seconds. People don't want to wait a minute and 8 seconds or 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
Yeah.
But when you go to pubs and stuff over in England, they'll have all the beers, the side pours on busy. If there's a soccer game going on, they'll have all the side pours. the beer engines poured and all lined up, and then they're just topping them off and finish them because they're going so fast. They have a whole line of them.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, you got to put your order in, knowing that you need it in a few minutes.
Right.
Yeah, and then they put it on the line and they start pouring it for you.
So what was the traditional style that you guys had on the beer engine?
Oh, it's an English
overseas.
I always had bitters. I loved English bitters.
Like an ordinary bitter, or
yeah,
like a mild or anything, or
some milds, and then also my first love was actually a Scotch bitter. So
really?
yeah,
I don't know if I've ever had that. Okay.
So a Scotch bitter is actually a little bit more malty than an English bitter. An English bitter has a little bit more of a hop profile. Not much. I mean, when you say bitter, most people think, oh, it's going to be like a crazy IPA. But yeah, you and I know.
Totally
an English bitter
yes.
is not bitter at all, which is wild.
Like an ESB is completely different.
So normally we have something equivalent to an ESB on the engine.
Oh, cool.
But when we ran out and we've just started really growing this year. We're doing a lot in distribution.
Yeah.
And so we're keeping up with that. And so that recipe isn't going to get brewed for a couple of weeks. So we'll have this one on until we're ready with the next one.
There's a guy in the club that he has a beer engine. He rotates from a dark mild and an ordinary bitter.
Yeah.
He just goes back and forth. And then last year at beer camp, a buddy he called it his Red Coat Rations.
Oh, okay.
Which was a bitter as well on that. So we got a couple of guys nerd out about that stuff, and I mean, honestly, if it was just that, I mean, it's great that you guys do other beer that's phenomenal, but just that is keeping me coming back.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank
you. Well, our next beer that we're putting on is dark mild.
Oh, nice. Oh,
yeah.
Well, looks like I'm gonna have to come out again.
Well, I hope yes, please do. And
I sure will.
I'm very critical of our beer. Always trying to get it better, but our dark mild recipe is really good.
Yeah.
There are a few recipes that I want to almost every recipe we do, I want to change constantly. Oh, I can make it better. There's a few I'm like, oh, you know what? We're there. Right. And the dark mild is, if it sold more, we would have it on tap more. But it confuses people.
I'm sure it does
because it's such a dark color. My dark mild is pretty dark as well, and it's full of flavor, but people think it's going to be super strong, and it's only 4.2%.
Yes. That's why you hammer them out, my man.
Yeah.
So for those that don't understand what a beer engine is and what the slow pull, side pull, whatever you want to call it, a tap is, what is the advantages of having those taps versus traditional?
Great question. So the advantage to those, if people like softer beers, and
they're not highly carbed like what your typical American lagers are.
That's right.
Yeah.
So carbonic acid actually creates the perception of bitterness on your tongue because it's so prickly and it cleans your mouth so quickly. So if there is any residual sweetness or sugar left in the beer, a lot of times it will wipe it out really quick. But it also makes it in most cases more refreshing. So a lot of the American light lagers that we get are super light, highly carved.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this. On average, most beers are in the 2.5 volume range, and a lot of those light lagers, American light lagers, are at 2.7, 2.8. They're like super prickly, but it keeps it super clean and makes you want to drink more.
Okay, you're right.
But it also creates like a tinge of like that prickly. It actually accentuates bitterness. Mm-hmm. So doing a side pull or doing a beer engine. Well, I should probably talk about them separately. The beer engine, it actually is very low carb, and as opposed to pressure from the CO2 pushing it out of the keg, it's actually like a pump, and it's sucking it out of the keg.
Right, okay.
So it's like, it usually has even pressure or negative pressure, so you're actually sucking the beer out versus positive pressure. You open the tap and it's pushed out because there's so much pressure from the CO2. So it makes for a very like soft, velvety mouthfeel. There's less carbonation, doesn't fill you up as much, and so it's easier to drink.
For sure.
In a session. If you're going to go to the pub and have a few pints or several pints, it's designed to be low alcohol, low carbonation, so you can actually sit for a while. And that was that's the really the epitome of a session beer, right? Being able to just sit around and drink it a lot.
Which I really like which is weird because I really like the softness of it. Yeah. Which is. And I don't know how to explain this unless guys have tried it. It's different than like the weird softness you get out of, say, nitrous.
It is. It's different.
Because I'm not a huge fan of nitrous beers.
Yeah.
But I love a beer out of a beer engine. It's I guess I would describe it the same way. Maybe that's where the English language is broken. Mm-hmm. It's like hard to describe because you both get light, airy, like softness out of both of them, but they're different at the same time. It's weird.
Nitrogen's because of the process for carbing nitrogen is totally different than CO2.
Yeah.
The carbonation method to actually get it to intake into the liquid. But it does create like kind of that velvetyness, right? If that's a word. I don't know if it is or not. It is now. That's a word. Velvetyness. But it also creates, to me, a thicker, fuller mouthfeel, which feels like I'm eating a meal versus on the beer engine, it's lighter and it's just like more. I think it's just a little bit more crisp, and it doesn't seem as sweet, cloying that the nitrogen, I think, imparts into a beer.
Okay, I think that is the best way to describe it. And all the things that you're describing is what people like about nitrogen, and that's all the stuff that I don't like about it.
Oh yeah,
really
well,
weird.
it's like creamier. So when I think of
it's
cream,
creamy. Yes,
it's creamy.
It is.
When I think of cream, I don't think of like light and crisp. Correct. When I think of cream, I think of the opposite.
Yes, exactly. But it's weird because it's still light at the same time, but it is creamy.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, it does something
it's
with
different.
your like taste buds.
Yeah, it's different.
But anyway,
I'm a side pull. I mean, I'm a side pull and a beer engine fan.
Right. So you were going to tell me the difference on the side pull. Didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So side pull, it actually it has like a little mechanism inside which breaks up the CO2. So it actually does cause CO2 to break out of solution. But when it does that, when you have a beer that has enough protein in it, it's going to give you better head retention. So if you're using Carafoam or Dextrin, I know you said you want to get nerdy, so let's go. Exactly. Those things create better structure because of proteins. Okay. You get that head retention, and that accentuates that.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, to give you that nice big moosey head.
Yeah.
So like right when you pour it, you have this like nice beautiful head that comes out.
I've seen some that come off where it's so light it even like extends above the top of the glass. Yeah. Yep.
And I love that style.
Yeah, and I will say the Kolsch completely different.
Oh, it's
from what I brought home in a can versus what you poured me on the.
It's very different. We've had so many people talk about that. We've actually thought about putting that beer on a regular line and doing it on the side pull. It is. It's soft. It takes a lot of that. I mean, there's still plenty. You can see there's a lot of carbonation in there.
Yeah.
But it takes that carbonation out, and it does make it softer. And it's just a nice way to drink a beer.
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, this is the thing. Like the U.S., we're so young.
Yeah.
And we decided to change things when we moved here. They did it right in England.
There's a lot of stuff over there that is like just, and the beer styles, their beer game. Now, I would say, I think, no offense to anybody, but the U.S. beer game is stronger than anywhere in the world right now.
Now, when you say that, do you mean from like a creativity standpoint? Because it does seem like we are a little bit more creative.
Absolutely. We're not so Reinheitsgebot that we only want to stick to certain.
Glad that you could say that word.
Yeah. But what's interesting now is there are a lot of German, not like Weihenstephaner or anything like that, but some of the other ones that they're creating IPAs and other things because they realize there's a demand for those now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, which is cool. But that tends to be the thing. Like Americans, we'll take it and we're like, okay, let's see how many ways we can bastardize this and like just turn it into something crazy and turn it upside down. And I kind of use the description of jazz a lot.
For sure.
So it's like, okay, we understand.
Jazz it up, yeah.
Yeah, we understand how beer's made and jazz music. In Denton, it's a big jazz school, so jazz musicians are good at taking, okay, we understand the mechanics of music, now we're going to take it and flip it upside down and make it sound totally different, and it's so badass.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, like, how are you pulling this off? So I think that's what Americans do with beer, is we come up with all these crazy ideas, and like, okay, what if we take an IPA and we make it look like this? And people, originally when the hazy IPA thing started, now, I know, Michael Jackson or, people, brewmasters in Germany were probably rolling over in their graves. Like, what are you doing? You're supposed to have beautiful, clean beer.
Exactly, I'm sure.
But it's just the idea of experimentation and pushing the limits as far as we possibly can and creating new things.
Yeah.
Which
I love what we've done here in America. I'm not trying to knock American beer styles. I just like that you give a little homage to like where beer came from.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
I wish that everybody did that. As much as I love a hazy or like a West Coast IPA, I love my IPAs. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
In the brew club, I guess I'm known as the guy that enjoys IPAs more than most people do. Because sometimes they can be palate wreckers when it comes to because when we have a club, we're all bottle sharing and stuff. So like, I'll wreck my palate. Like, I don't care. I like some of those hops. Love American styles, but I love like I said, I love that you bring homage to the traditions. Yes, because sometimes, everybody does IPAs.
Right.
I can go anywhere and get an IPA.
Right.
I can't go everywhere and get these traditional English styles.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And that's, our whole approach to brewing has been, one, first and foremost, just make great quality beer.
Yeah.
That's whatever it is. But we want to drink and enjoy all styles. And it's interesting now, I see people coming in as beer in the craft segment has become more mainstream.
Oh, yeah.
People are going back and saying things like, oh my gosh, I just tried this amazing beer. It was called Meredsu. And man, wow, it's like it's like, no, that beer's not new. It's like, if you want to call it Duvel or Duvel, these other beers, or like, Chimay. I just had this beer called Chimay. I was like, oh my gosh, like it's a brand new experience.
Like, a long time.
No. You're actually coming full circle because now you're seeing where beer came from, and you were drinking all these hazies and like fruited sour beers, and now you're going back full circle to like historical beers, which were popular 15 years ago.
For sure.
If you went into a place and like, oh, I'm going to have a Chimay. And now it's like, no, I'm going to have like an American style beer, and we've got Belgian too. So we do a little bit of everything, one, because we appreciate it, and we want to, what kind of mood you're in. Like, let's try something different.
Right.
But then also it's a lot about, being able to express and pay. A lot of people don't have brown ales. They don't have Doppelbocks. They don't have a lot of traditional styles. And we love those, and turns out people like those.
Yeah.
And they like hazies.
Right.
Go figure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like one of the things that I've noticed that you guys do a little bit different than anybody that I've seen in the North Texas area at least is I know at Blue Bonnet you guys brought I think it was a blonde ale that was barrel aged.
Yeah.
A little bit different because normally I see barrel aged beers and they're stouts. Sometimes I'll see a porter, but usually they're the darker beers. But I noticed you did the blonde there. I think I saw online that you guys have a red that's barrel aged right now?
An amber.
An amber. Okay.
Yeah, we have an amber that's
kind of makes you call it a red, but yeah.
Yeah, it fell into that category, and that's not. Yeah, that we need to figure out, see if we can change that. But so barrel aging is super fascinating to me because you're adding new things to it. But we have long believed that you can barrel age something other than a porter or a stout. And so we experiment sometimes to our fault with new things.
Okay.
And I am obsessed with barrel aging things that should not be barrel aged.
Okay.
Because if you do it right, it's fantastic. Now, granted, we've screwed up a lot of beers too in the learning process.
For sure.
But we want to experiment with things that are, it's that classic American garage. You're like, okay, how can we completely dismantle this and put it back together and do something that no one's done before?
Yep. Love it.
So like one beer that we did, which was really cool, we took a pineapple hazy IPA. Sorry, a pineapple milkshake hazy IPA.
Okay.
And we barrel aged it, which is like commercial suicide.
Unheard of, yeah.
Yeah, I
sure.
mean, like nobody barrel ages hazies.
Yeah.
You're supposed to drink them like, oh man, it's like 3 months old. It's too old. And so we were like, oh, well, let's try this. But we put it in a peach brandy barrel.
Ooh.
Yes, which is crazy. And we're like, wait a minute.
I mean, if you thought about this ahead of time when brewing the beer, you would have accentuated some of the peach to try to.
Yeah.
So it sounds phenomenal, actually.
Well, it turned out incredible. We left it in there for 2 years.
Okay.
Which is ridiculous for a hazy milkshake IPA.
Yeah.
But what turned out is like all oak has Brettanomyces in it, which is wild yeast, and it creates those like farmhouse, wet dog, horse blanket, funky, phenolics, and I like those. But we tried it, and it was like, okay, this is good, but there's something happening. Let's let Mother Nature do its thing. So we left it in there for 2 years. And we ended up pulling it out, and the Brett started expressing. Brett can eat through a lot of sugar that regular beer yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, can't go through. So it started cleaning it up and drying it out because we had this big, super fruited, heavy milkshake IPA that had just like, it was like a lot of flavor and a lot of sugar. And it started eating through that and cleaning it up. And the beer started like this, and it ended up like that after being there for 2 years.
Yeah.
But it kept some of the pineapple. The peach was present. And it turned out to be an absolutely incredible beer. We took it to Denver to the Rare Beer Festival.
Oh, yeah.
And this is kind of a fun story for me personally.
Yeah.
We were at the Rare Beer Festival, which is, I don't know how many thousands of people, requests to be in it or put in applications, and we got accepted. It was only like 55 that get accepted.
Okay.
But we got to go there, and one of the highlights of my life now will probably be that Jim Koch of Samuel Adams Boston Beer Company came up and tried the beer, and he was like, "Oh, someone was telling me about this, this peach brandy aged, like hazy IPA thing. Like, what is this?" And he tried it, and he loved it. And he was like, "Oh," and he pulled me aside. And here I am with like one of my icons,
right?
And Jim Koch, and he's like, well, "How did you make this? Like, so tell me, like, what we ended up talking for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And while we're there, he's like calling and texting Sam Caglione of Dogfish Head fame, and he came over and he was like, "Oh man, I got to try this beer."
Oh, nice.
And so he came over and he tried the beer and he's like, "Oh my gosh," he goes, "I've never had anything like this." And coming from Sam, who does crazy shit,
off-centered ales.
Yes. And I was like, he was like, "Gosh, I love this." He goes, "This is such a great idea." Like, "Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful." And I'm like, "How'd you come up with this?" Like, "Well, we were probably drunk. I don't know." And we decided to throw this in. And he was like, they were so nice and so complimentary. And they're like, "Wow, we love this beer." And that's like so creative and inventive. So I was super happy about that. People with amazing palates, because it wasn't for everyone. It was it was so unique. It was unlike anything I'd tasted before. And that made me so happy. But it was enjoyable. I mean, you would drink it and like, I need more. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I need more. But it was so different. So we're always playing around with things.
I love that.
Like this beer we have in front of us, this is a classic German Doppelbock.
Oh, nice.
Yep, and we put it in a port barrel, like a wine port.
Like a port wine. Okay,
yeah, like a port wine barrel, and that's a little weird or different. But we thought those two flavor profiles could go together very well. You've got naturally with a Doppelbock, you've got those dark fruit flavors, but it's still, it's a lager, so it's crisp and it finishes clean. It can stand a longer duration in a barrel as well. Port has a lot of those same flavor profiles.
Some of those dark fruits.
So it's like, let's take those and put them together, and that's what this one is.
That's awesome. So that's another thing that I really like that you guys do. Cheers, my man. Is that you don't just use whiskey barrels.
Oh, we use, the peach brandy. Yeah, so you get a lot of the port comes through in that. But it really marries well, it matches well with that natural dark fruit that you already get in a Doppelbock.
Like a little bit of raisin-y, a little bit. Yeah,
it's raisin.
I like that a lot, actually.
So
it's light, and you get a little bit of the barrel out of it.
Yeah.
It's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't know how young this is, but this is great.
So that beer, we left it in the barrel for about 8 or 9 months.
Okay.
But that beer is, we just released it or re-released it. We kept a couple of kegs. That beer's 2 years old.
Okay.
And it's probably better now.
No, that's the thing. So like I love beer. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm a little bit of a.
Me too.
like I say, and I've said this before. Like, hot take. There's some barrel aged beers that I think are overrated, and the biggest thing is that they're too young and they're hot.
Yeah.
I feel like most barrel aged beers I have to let sit for a couple of years before it really hits its peak, and I'm like, this is exactly where it's at. I'm not getting hit in the face with way too much alcohol and too much of the barrel. You got to let it age. Even when you get it out of the barrel, you got to let it sit for a while and meld. So this being 2 years old, that's money right there.
It's so smooth.
That's money.
It's so smooth.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's probably about 10.5%, 11%.
Would have never guessed.
Yes.
Like I said, money.
Well, like you said, after a couple of years, like all those sharp corners and everything just kind of rounds out.
Yes.
And it's smooth and it's easier to drink. So that's what, we keep a bunch of stuff back there. A lot of barrel aged stuff.
Yeah.
And every once in a while we're like, you know what? We haven't tried these kegs in like a year. Let's go try one. We'll pull it off and we're like, no, that sucks, leave it. Or sometimes we're just like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Like, let's share it.
I love that
Share it with the people. And then it's just it's a lot of fun. So.
Dude, that same thing happened recently. Like there's a buddy of mine that's in the club. He does meads.
Oh, nice.
And he had like an elderberry mead sitting in a keg for like 4 years. And he's like, hey, we're sitting here. Appreciate you guys coming to help me do whatever. And he's like, let's just try some of this. And I'm like, bro, it is the perfect age.
Nice.
Like, don't mess with it. It's not too sweet.
Yeah.
You let some of that alcohol dissipate or whatever it is.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, so case in point, and especially like for home brewing, we keep a whole library of beers back there. And if there's ever, when we try things, we'll leave stuff like back there for years. So just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we tried a cranberry ale that we made with champagne yeast.
Oh, okay.
And it was 4 years old.
So almost, like Saison-esque, no?
No phenolic character at all.
Okay.
It was like super bright and crisp and dry. It was like champagne, and it was super effervescent. It was fucking tastic.
Nice.
If I may say so.
No, I love it. That's
it
great.
was so good. And all of us were like, wow, we need to make that again, like now, and just start letting it age for a few years, because it was like champagne.
Right.
It just, the longer you waited, it just got more crisp and dry. And it was still like beautiful and bright. And the color was like, because of the cranberries, it was this like beautiful, like vibrant red color.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. So yeah,
that's awesome.
If you ever have things that you think have gone bad, just leave them there for another 6 months to a year, and then pop it and try it again. You may end up with a gem that you didn't know.
I don't know what I did, and I wish I would have brought some so I can get your expert opinion or whatever.
Well, you got to come back.
Because I did an Irish Red for our homebrew competition.
Oh, sweet.
And like
Sweet.
I got it. It was fermented. It fermented down way lower than I expected it to. Mm-hmm. But went to keg it, tried a sample, got the final gravity on it, and I was like, dude, this thing is way drier than I expected it to be.
Oh, yeah.
I thought honestly, it was unpalatable. Like it was almost gave me cotton mouth.
Oh, wow.
Threw it on CO2, let it carbonate, and I don't know what CO2 friggin' did to that beer. It's not like the greatest beer in the world by now, like by any means. But I'm like, damn, this is 1,000 times better than it was.
It saved it.
It saved it. Like
nice.
Just adding CO2 and a little bit of age.
Yeah.
Like there's something about it that you just let stuff sit for a while, which this comes back to like in America, we want like instant results.
Yep.
We are very impatient. But like, this time of year in overseas, they're cracking Oktoberfests.
Yeah.
And they've been letting them sit since March.
Yeah.
Like Marzen, they've been letting them sit since March.
Yeah.
While we like a month is too long. So I love that you're like, hey, let's just sit and be patient, let it do its thing. It'll eventually turn into what we want it to be. So I love that idea.
Well, and it's also people when they think about aging, it's always wine or whiskey.
Yes.
And it works with certain beers too. If you protect the beer and make sure it doesn't get oxidized, even in a barrel, low ABV stuff, you can let it age for a while and it turns into gorgeous stuff. It's more work. You got to protect it. You have to be willing to take on the liability of having to dump it if it's messed up.
Which is even more impressive that you did that with a hazy IPA.
For 2 years.
Those are susceptible to being oxidized.
Oh, badly.
Yeah. But you poured me something different here. Obviously, it's a lot darker than everything we had today.
It is. But this is kind of a fun story I want to share with you. It's got a really cool label.
Love it.
This is a beer called Night Witch.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's got like a shadow walker shaman on it. But the picture is like a shaman, but it's this. She's got a staff. It's wrapped in barbed wire, and it's got a wolf head with the antlers, which obviously the homage to Denton County. But my son lives in the Pacific Northwest, and he's a Texan, and he calls himself the Lone Wolf. And he does a radio station. He's in a heavy metal band.
Love it.
He does, a lot of art stuff with barbed wire, and so that was kind of an homage to him. And there's if you get the can, there's a lot of Easter eggs in the clouds that you'll have to check out. There's some stuff that's pretty funny. But so this beer is called Night Witch. Okay. It's a Russian Imperial Stout, and I'll try to keep the story kind of short, but it's really fascinating. So I'm a history nerd as well as a beer nerd. Bad combination, but it's cool just because the Night Witch is a real story. Mm-hmm. The Night Witches actually were from World War II, and they were so if you look at the Eastern European theater, when the Germans and the Russians were battling, the Germans had the upper hand and they were winning, and so the Russians said, we need to do anything possible to try to win. So they found 400 women. They brought them in, taught them how to fly within a couple of months. They gave them a bunch of old planes from World War I. They were training planes. They literally put them back together with cardboard and canvas. Plywood and canvas, and just to keep them strapped together.
Yeah.
But the planes were so slow, they were noisy, they didn't have any artillery where they could defend themselves. So they taught them how to fly in a few months. They'd strap bombs to them. They would only do missions or sorties at night. They would fly over into Germany. But since the planes were so slow and loud, they'd fly in really high. They'd cut off the engines. They would coast down to their target, drop the bombs, turn the engines on, and take off again. They were massively successful. They dropped over 30,000 bombs, had a huge turn in the tide of helping win the war. But it was actually the Germans that nicknamed them the Night Witches, because they started creating this fear because they never knew when they were going to come.
For sure.
But they said since the engines were off, all they heard, and they would fly really low, they'd come down, all they heard was this like swoosh sound. It sounded like brooms, like sweeping brooms in the sky. So the Germans called them the Night Witches. But the Night Witches were massively effective. The Night Witches from Russia are still the most decorated Russian pilots in Russian history.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they are the most highly acclaimed and highly decorated still. But nobody hears about them.
Right.
So we release this beer on Halloween every year, and it's 16%.
Okay.
It's super smooth. It is a barrel-aged imperial stout, but just like the Night Witches snuck up on the Germans, we say this beer it's super smooth.
It'll sneak up on you.
It'll sneak up on you and fuck you up. So just like the Night Witches
that's the
did.
way to do it right there, my man.
So that's the story. So cheers. Yeah, nice 16% barrel-aged imperial stout. Oh man, this has got so much flavor going on.
Okay, so how young is this? Or old, whatever you call it.
This beer, so we
How long
made
has it
it.
been out of the barrels?
It was in the barrel for a year, and we released it, or we put it in barrels so it was in the barrel for a year. Then we released it last October, and we had one keg that was left, and so we pulled aside and we decided to can it all about 2 weeks ago.
Because this is this is the perfect balance.
Thank you.
I'm glad that we let it sit and warm up a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
Because
totally.
you get a lot more of those flavors out of it.
Yeah.
The roasty, like chocolate
Tons
comes
of chocolate.
through very well.
Like tons of roast.
A lot more than because like usually with these you get a lot of the roastiness, you get a little bit of coffee. Mm-hmm. I'm glad the chocolate hits you more than the coffee does, and it's not. I mean, it's you can taste the alcohol. Now, granted, I don't know that I would say it was 16% by any means. So you let it sit for the perfect balance of, hey, I get a little bit of something. So it sneaks up on you a little bit, but not too bad.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah.
Damn, this is you're changing my mind on these barrel aged. Like I said,
good.
in one of the most recent episodes, I literally said, hot take: barrel aged beers are overrated. And I wonder if people just aren't doing barrel aged right,
or they're just
they're taking them out of the keg
enough.
and they're selling them to the masses, expecting the average person to understand what to do with it. When I'm like, no, you sell it to the masses when it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Not like when you hey, here's a beer, sit on it for 2 years and it'll be good.
Yeah.
Like, give it to me when I can drink it now.
Well, that's what
and
we
it
did.
sounds like that's what you guys do.
We have a lot. We have a whole section in the cooler in the back that we leave barrel-aged beers, and we'll try them. And it's through trial and error. We find beers that are ready to drink immediately, and we can tell in the barrel. And we say, well, okay, it also needs to come out of the barrel. The barrel is imparting too much character. We're at risk of becoming oxidized or something. Let's pull it out, and then let's let it set back there for another year. And just let it kind of just soothe and come together. And, as long as we put it in the right conditions, most of the time it works. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, you guys do it right.
Thank you.
Honestly.
Well, and the beer that we brought to Bluebonnet, which was a blonde.
Right.
We aged that in a barrel from Bent Distilling, which is in Louisville.
Okay.
They have amazing product. Love those people. They're such incredible people, and their product is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, they made a barrel-aged old fashioned.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they put all the ingredients of an old fashioned into a barrel, and then we got the barrel afterward, and then that's what we aged the blonde in. And so it turned this blonde.
That's right. It
turned this blonde into an old-fashioned cocktail, like mocktail beer, and it was super cool, wasn't it? It was
with a light body and everything. It was great. Yeah,
it was light, but it had like so many levels of complexity. It was like, whoa, what's going on? Whoa, what's happening in my mind right now?
Exactly.
So that turned out really good. We also did it with our Hefeweizen, which naturally has some of that fruity character. We put that in a barrel too.
In that same style barrel.
Well, we got two barrels that were the same.
Okay.
The old fashioned. One was the blonde. One we did our wheat beer.
Oh, that one's interesting.
And those are all like 5% beers.
For sure.
Like So you just got to make sure your methodology is really good.
The Hefeweizen's interesting. A little bit
It was
of cherry, a little bit of like banana and clove together.
Oh yeah, it was good.
That sounds very, very interesting.
It was
because initially I'm going to be honest,
fantastic.
my mind says I don't know about that, but I'd have to try it obviously.
It turned out the blonde was ready first. Mm-hmm. The other one had more complexity, so we had to wait about 3 more months before we served it. But it was better than the blonde.
Really?
Yeah, because there's some of those natural citrus orange components to a hef as well. Those blended so well with the old fashioned.
Yep.
You know, the Luxardo cherries that added kind of this undertone of sweetness that went really well with the bananas and the clove. So it all just was like,
okay.
It was like, well, oh my gosh, it's so good.
We better need to be better wordsmith because the way that you described it made it sound way better than the way I was trying to describe it.
Well, I don't know, but we also it's a labor of love for us. So we're like making notes on these things and tracking them and figuring out, okay, like what are we trying to get out of this? What do we actually get out of it? So yeah, it's a lot of fun. This
has been the most interesting experience. You've given me the most information that I could ever ask for.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here.
And I say everybody needs to come to Denton County Brewing. Check these guys out because they do the best barrel aged.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, like I said, before today, I was convinced that barrel aged beers were overrated. Now I'm like, maybe they're not. Maybe I'm just drinking them too early.
Or people need to experiment with anything.
Some more, yeah.
You can do it with a stout, but you can do it with actually any of these beers that we have. Yeah. And we do a lot of wine barrel aged beers too. So
yes, that is phenomenal. Well, Seth, and I really appreciate you letting me come in. And
thank you so much for being here. Are you kidding? Thank you so much.
Phenomenal, my brother. I appreciate you, my man.
Okay, what are we going to finish on? What are we going to toast with?
What did you just go back to the beginning?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I like it.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
We appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode of Dudes and Brews. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever platform you're on, we're on there. We have a YouTube channel, Dudes and Brews. We would love if you would subscribe there as well. If you are subscribed and you want to help us out just a little more, unsubscribe and resubscribe again. It sounds funny and stupid and kind of obnoxious, all of the subscribing and resubscribing and stuff, but it helps within these little algorithms games for like climbing the charts, because again, we are organic and we are where we are because of you guys.
Yeah, we really do appreciate your support. Shout us out. We really do love it when you guys interact with us, when you add us, mention us, put us on your stories, tag us, all that fun stuff, all the stuff the kids are doing. We like grabbing that stuff and we put it up for you guys. So we appreciate you so much. Keep having fun, drinking them brews, hanging with them dudes. Tune in next week for another episode of Dudes and Brews.